Welcome to a special edition of the Darden Admissions podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to continue our ongoing faculty spotlight series, what we're calling Office Hours, with a conversation with Casey Lichtendahl. Casey is a member of the Darden faculty, and he is also the co-academic director of the MSBA program here at the Darden School of Business. We recently connected with Casey to talk a bit more about his background, what led him to Darden, his research interests, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is my interview with Casey Lichtendahl. Casey, thank you for waking up early. I know you're on West Coast time these days. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Brett. It's great to be here.
Well, Casey, one of the things I really enjoyed as part of this Office Hour series is to hear a little bit more of the personal stories of our Darden faculty. I think people look at the website to see your research areas, interests, but tell us a little bit more about your background and your story.
Well, how far back shall I go?
Well, let's go to the beginning. Where are you from?
I grew up in Ohio. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, and then made my way out of the Midwest and went to school on the East Coast and spent some time in New Jersey. And then after graduation, I went back to Cincinnati and joined a family business. It was a beer brewing business. Did that for a while before we decided to exit the beer brewing industry and sold the facility to Sam Adams. The founder of Sam Adams, Jim Cook, is from Cincinnati, so he wanted to have a facility there, and he acquired our plant. And at the time, we were off embarking on founding a new company focused on the iced tea market. So we started a company called Tradewinds Iced Tea and spun that out and operated that for another 15 or so years and sold that in 2010 to some private equity folks and Nestle Waters.
I want to go back to
your... So I spent a lot of time in the beverage industry. That didn't come through in that response.
Well, let's go back to your family story. So what was it like growing up around your family business, having entrepreneurs in your family, people who are running and directing their own business?
Well, my family didn't start the beer, or my father didn't start it. It was started by my great grandfather. So it goes back a ways. So the entrepreneurial gene was there, but we didn't really exercise it until we started this iced tea company. But growing up in that business was fascinating. Business was a part of my childhood. Weekends were spent touring the facility and overhearing lots of conversations about strategy and operations and marketing and all of the things that go into running a successful business.
So how does a family go from we're in the beer business, you sell to Sam Adams, to deciding that what you'd like to do is focus on the iced tea market? That seems like a relatively big pivot, even though it's still within beverages.
Yeah, so back in the late 80s, early 90s, regional brewers were a dying breed, and to supplement their income and to fill capacity, they would co-pack, contract manufacture for other brands. And one thing we started to contract manufacture, we were the first contract manufacturer for Arizona iced tea, and it woke us up to some other markets that might be more promising, faster growing, higher margin. And so we pivoted. We started our own brand up and exited the beer industry. The whole revolution of smaller brewers having success in the market came a little bit late for us. We stepped off about a decade too soon, I think.
Well, it's interesting what you share there, because if you go back in U.S. history, there were a lot of local beers that served local markets, maybe a regional footprint. And now we're back in that moment.
Yeah.
Are you surprised by this revolution in craft brewing and local brewing?
Yes, that very much surprised me. There were, I think, over 1,000 breweries at the time of Prohibition in 1933, when the 12-year prohibition on beer and spirits, hard liquor in the United States ended. It got down to, I think, under 50. I think we were at one point ranked 10th in the US. The Hudibel Schaenling Brewing Company is the company I'm referring to, our family business for a while. And now it's back up in the few thousands. I think last time I checked, it was like 2,400 brewers in the United States. It's really incredible.
Well, let's talk about your Darden story a bit more, because if folks have spent some time with your faculty profile, they've likely realized and read that you are a Darden alum. So many of our prospective students here today kind of going through this decision-making process to put Darden on their list and trying to figure out, what Darden's all about. How did you end up at Darden?
Well, I ended up at Darden looking at some brochures. I guess at the time when I was shopping for MBA programs, it wasn't all that common to go visit the school. And maybe this is similar to what folks who are overseas are experiencing, may not get a chance to visit these campuses. So I was a heavy consumer of brochures coming out of MBA programs, and there were two programs on my mind, Harvard and Darden, and both were case method. And one of them felt more like a cooperative environment, maybe a little bit less competitive. Folks at the school seemed quite interested in helping others around them get through the program. I wanted to study intensively. At the time, it had a reputation for being a boot camp. It's less so that way now. Used to go to school on Fridays. The previous generation told me we had it easy. They went to school on Saturdays. Now there are no classes on Fridays. It's just Monday through Thursday. The program's still intense. And then I was looking for that. You can learn a lot when you decide to cover the ground and give you the proper foundation in business.
Well, Casey, there's this great video with you reflecting on your research interests and your work at the Darden School. And one of the things that you share in that video is that you took a class as a first-year student at Darden that basically changed your life and changed the trajectory of your career. You want to talk a little bit more about that story?
Yeah, that's very real, Brett. I was in first-year decision analysis, or at the time it was called Quantitative Analysis, with Robert Carraway. And Robert is still on the faculty. He's now a colleague of mine. But that first course I experienced in these quantitative methods just lit me up. I wanted to understand what was behind the algorithms I was using. I didn't quite understand how someone could develop such a deep set of logical rules to solve a problem with the press of a button. We were using Solver in Excel. We were using At Risk, a Monte Carlo simulation software. I was just fascinated by how deep the foundations were and the principles that were used to build up those algorithms. And I just wanted to understand more about all of that. And that eventually led me to just taking a lot of quantitative courses throughout the MBA program, but also ultimately led me to go pursue a PhD in the field, and ultimately then spend my life in academia, largely in academia, trying to create some of my own algorithms.
One of the things that I was thinking about, in that story, listening to you tell that story in your video, is wondering, were you always a numbers person? Like, this interest in quantitative analysis, had this bubbled up in other parts of your life and you just happened to find this vehicle, this framework that really resonated with you?
Yeah, two things stand out. Yeah, it was always a part of me. It was the only thing I really didn't have to study to do well at. And I remember a statistics course when I was in the 10th grade, which was surprising. I would talk to friends at other schools in Cincinnati, and they didn't have statistics in the 10th grade. There was a very passionate teacher at my high school, and that was the first glimpse I had of what I do now professionally on a daily basis. And then the second experience was in college, taking a econometrics course and learning about regression analysis. And the project we were working on was how to predict the price of wine and what covariates you could use to predict those prices and whether that helped you buy wine in the market. Our professor was a wine collector, and I think he made his own personal hobby into part of the curriculum. It was really cool.
Well, that's great. And you come to Darden, you take Robert Carraway's class. For those of you who haven't spent some time with our faculty listing on the website, Robert is still on the faculty. In fact, if you attended last weekend's virtual diversity conference, he taught one of the mock classes. So he's still here. You could potentially have a class with him, a legend here at Darden, to be sure. One of the things, Casey, I mean, quantitative analysis, it's a huge field, and this kind of work can go in a lot of different directions. How did you find your particular niche or your particular area of interest?
Mm-hmm. I got pretty interested in, so actually before I did the PhD and after I finished Darden, I went and did 2 master's degrees at Stanford, and one of them was in the stat department, the other was in the management science and engineering department. And the course I really gravitated to in the MS&E department at Stanford was the decision analysis course, which is one of the courses I teach quite frequently at Darden, first year core course. And it's an interesting mix of forecasting and decision making. You need to make a forecast to calculate an expected value, to know what the value of a particular option is. And it was that mix of forecasting and decision making that really drew me in. And that's what I studied at Duke in a PhD program in decision sciences. There was just enough statistics to keep that part of my brain lit up. And there was enough of real world decision making where there was an application for all of that forecasting and prediction work. That was sort of the sweet spot. Now, more recently, I spend most of my time thinking about forecasting. The decision-making side of the house, if you will, of our field, hasn't experienced the kind of growth that the forecasting side has, and probably everyone in the world is aware of this. Machine learning has taken over the forecasting world and the prediction world. And that's exciting to be contributing to that push forward. It's a big push forward for humanity. It's changing the way we experience everything digitally online. All of us experience these algorithms daily, whether we know it or not. And it's great to be a part of something that is growing so rapidly.
It feels like this has been in the news a lot lately. Algorithms and what's being served to you, and some of the ways that machines are operating within these algorithms feels like a very timely topic.
Yes. Yeah. There's a fair amount of ethics that goes into all of this, as we're now all, if we didn't realize before, it should be at the top of our minds.
Well, Casey, I want to come back to something that you mentioned, because we undoubtedly have people on this call this morning who come from a quantitative background. They're excited about statistics. They have done some of the things that you've talked about. They're engaged in forecasting, building models, this kind of thing. And we also undoubtedly have people on this call who have not done any of those things, that have never had exposure. So you've led the first year course in decision analysis, where you have this mix of people in the room. How do you think about teaching to everybody in that classroom?
Well, yeah, this is something we're really committed to at Darden, is taking in cohorts of very diverse learners, folks that don't have strong quantitative backgrounds, folks that have largely qualitative experiences in their work life prior to coming to an MBA program. And we tailor the onboarding process, and it starts even before the core before you take your first 4-credit class. There are courses you can take ahead of it, non-credit bearing courses, things we call Darden before Darden, that help people ease into this environment where there are going to be some quantitative things that are discussed and advanced and developed, along with more of the managerial judgment part of what goes into getting up to speed on the foundations of business. And I think we've got a sequence of cases, a sequence of experiences, a sequence of tech notes, a sequence of case discussions, class discussions, approaches for helping those who don't quite have the quantitative experience. Even if they don't have the quantitative knack, we think we can develop some intuition around that. We think we can provide the basic foundations to, at a bare minimum, know how to collaborate with people who have these skills, know how to leverage teams that have these skills, know how to manage, lead, and ultimately commercialize on the basis of technology that's largely advanced through these quantitative methods.
I'll see a question here in the Q&A, and we're starting to get a few submissions to the Q&A. So if you do have some questions as we go along, please feel free to ask. We always get more questions than we can actually speak to here, but it's great to hear what's on your mind. A question here about any advice for someone coming in, maybe not a numbers person, not as much background in this area, wondering, what can I do to get ready? You mentioned Darden before Darden. Any other practical tips you've seen work for students, things that you think are helpful for students to keep in mind as they orient towards this experience?
Yeah, I think you can do some outside reading. This is on the softer side, but sometimes the softer side can help you warm up to the harder side of what's going on in these quantitative fields. And one book I recommend to folks that's fairly accessible is Nate Silver's The Signal and the Noise. It's a great overview of lots of things quantitative in the world of forecasting. It's one of the things that you'll use in a finance class, use in a marketing class, you'll use in an operations class, and of course it'll be at the fore of what you learn in, say, a decision analysis class.
Appreciate that recommendation. One of the things that's been fun about office hours is we've asked faculty to share some reading recommendations for people who want to learn a little bit more, kind of dig into this area. So Casey, you talked about your progression and sort of how you got interested in your research area. And so you are, someone who spent a lot of time forecasting and sort of thinking about these kinds of things. Tell us a little bit more about the particular forecasting approach, or, kind of questions that you enjoy thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, like most folks in this field, I'm interested in what machine learning has to offer the world of forecasting, and in particular time series forecasting. That's one of my focuses in my research these days. It's what I did while I was on leave working at Google. It's what I still do part-time for Google now. Time series forecasting is a place where I think there's a sweet spot for incorporating machine learning into the methodology, not losing sight of some of the tried and true statistical methods that have worked now for over 50 years in that domain, as well as leaving the humans in the loop so that there's the ability to incorporate some human judgment. Particularly when you get into really long range forecasting, you've got a long-term horizon. You're looking out, say, a year and a half, 2 years. You want to build out a 5-year, 10-year model for forecasting a company's revenues, for instance. That's still a place where human judgment largely rules the day. And you can take some data, you can try to learn from the data, you can build out some statistical models. Maybe there's a machine learning model that can help in that context. But human judgment is still going to be a part of that process.
So I want to stick with this interest in machine learning for a second, because one of the things that you mentioned is that this has tremendous impact for humanity, right? The full scale of society. Where do you see it's, how do you think about this when you think about where we could go or what could happen here, and look on the horizon as somebody who's intimately involved with thinking about what machine learning can do?
Mm-hmm. Well, machine learning is making some amazing strides, especially in things like image recognition, and the step changes in improvement of the accuracy of these models has facilitated whole new industries. We're about to have a breakthrough, I think, on self-driving cars, for instance. It's already changed the way products like Google Photos works. You can search your catalog of photos and pretty much surface anything with just a keyword. And it's the combination of search technology, but also image recognition that allows that kind of a product to go forward. And we're experiencing with most digital applications, it's this interface between the information we have from the user together with things we're learning about the population. You're able to leverage similarities between users on these platforms, and that's all machine learning enabled. Where's machine learning headed? Well, a lot of folks are scared of AI. They think machine learning is the beginning of actual artificial intelligence, where the machine starts to have consciousness and create its own set of rules and create its own algorithm, write itself. They talk about the singularity, this moment when that might all happen, and all of a sudden we're in danger, and the evil machines rise up and take over. I've always been pretty skeptical of that. I spent a lot of time at Google over the last two and a half years, focused on building up a machine learning algorithm pretty much from scratch, with a little help from a few architectures that are existing, but pretty much from scratch to solve one of our time series problems at the company, forecasting compute loads at data centers. And we're achieving some accuracy improvements, but we're not blowing folks away with the improvements. This is not like 10x improvements. It's not even 2x. We're still in, sometimes the single digits, double digit percentage improvements. And so I feel like we're in a period where there have been some step changes, but now we're reaching, potentially in some areas diminishing returns. And so, yeah, I'm a little skeptical of the whole singularity. If we're on a more gentle improvement curve now for a while, gosh, it seems like the singularity's far off. I
appreciate a little bit of science fiction here for your Friday morning. So Casey, you mentioned it, and so this is a great time to talk about your experience at Google. You're still working part-time for Google. We probably have some attendees today who are interested in working at Google. How did that come together? And you mentioned doing this time series forecasting with data centers. That's fascinating. I didn't imagine that they had people doing that kind of thing, but makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, so I went to a conference in New York City in 2018, and it was a conference on time series forecasting. It was for the M4 competition. The M series of competitions is, I think, one of the oldest forecasting competitions in the world. It's been held about every decade since the 60s, and I think they're up to M now. And I went to this conference, and there was a gentleman on stage, and he was from Google, and he said, "Oh, by the way," when he finished his presentation, "Oh, by the way, if there are any academics in the audience who would like to spend some time at Google, I'll be in the back. Why don't you come and see me?" And I did that, and I met my current manager, Chris Fry, and had a great conversation. And from there, I was interviewing, and then trying to arrange a leave with UVA, and I went off to the West Coast and spent a year, and then of course COVID hit, and sort of time to come back. But thankfully we can all work remotely, and I still keep that engagement going part-time.
So you mentioned this data center project. Was that interesting to you to work on? Kind of to think about that particular question?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time in the beverage industry, focused on operations and making forecasts for production. And it's quite similar. In this case, it's a service, but it's got to be available, and it needs to be forecasted, planned for, parts ordered, machines installed and spun up, turned on, provisioned, and that feels actually quite similar to forecasting demand in the beverage industry. We're forecasting demand for compute power at these data centers, and it's a time series problem, and it's a very challenging problem. Our accuracies are still not what we like them to be. You'd like to have a perfect forecast, clairvoyance, basically know the future and order exactly to that demand. But out of stocks are expensive, so you have to order reasonably more than you actually expect, but not too much more. You don't want to have a bunch of excess inventory sitting around. So it's just a interesting problem, a problem I've thought about a long time, and it's quite rewarding to be part of a team where the forecasts you're making and the decisions that depend on it are in the billions of dollars on an annual basis. It's unlike any other decision I've been a part of.
Well, I was so fascinated to hear that thread from your work as you began your career in the beverage industry to what you're doing now. You think about beverages and data centers, they seem very different on the surface, but yet there's commonality there.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Well, some of our attendees might be wondering a bit about what time series forecasting is, and just want to check in on that just to make sure we're all on the same page, because we're going to talk a little bit later about some of your other research interests and things that you're working on now. But what specifically is time series forecasting?
Yeah, so time series forecasting is a field of statistics, I think it's fair to say, where you're trying to learn from some data. Statistics is largely a field about learning from data, but the data you're learning from in a time series context is the quantity that you're trying to forecast, just tracked through time, repeated measurements. You've got a history of that same quantity, say every month for the last 5 years, and you're trying to forecast it for each of the months over the next year. And so that's largely the data you have. You study that data and you try to build out some forecast that essentially extrapolates the past into the future. It's very different from a problem where the data you have to learn about a quantity you're interested in that you're trying to forecast is data on other variables. You're trying to predict how tall your 2.5-year-old son is going to be when he grows up. Maybe you're looking at other factors. You're looking at not his time series, how tall he was when he was a month old, 2 months old, 3 months, but you're looking to, how old are his relatives, or sorry, how tall are his relatives? It's data from other variables. So that's a different kind of problem than a time series forecasting problem.
Well, I'm seeing some questions here about Darden and the learning experience at Darden. And so I want to come back to the Darden classroom and ask you, the one thing that's on my mind is, how has your experience at Google influenced your teaching or how you're thinking about courses that you're leading?
It has really, Brett, informed the way I think about how data scientists interact with product managers. And product managers are largely MBAs, and they are folks embedded in these tech firms, and they don't generally manage people. What they manage are products, and they're focused on the user. And they rely on data scientists, they rely on software engineers. Software engineers build the product, data scientists help product managers make good inferences from the data they have. They get lots of data on users, they get lots of data on operations, and they need to make some sense of what all of this means. And that's where my mind is when I approach a data science like course, a course that's in the field of data science at Darden, and I'm teaching a lot of electives that are in that space. I'm constantly thinking about how to help a product manager think about ways to leverage what a data scientist does, how to collaborate with those people, how to add value to that process. Product managers who think of data science as a silo and treat it as an outsourced activity, I think will not see the kind of value they would like to see out of that type of endeavor. If they engage in it, they try to collaborate with those folks, they can really find ways to add value to the work that data scientists do. I find the most successful product managers at Google really do understand what a data scientist does, and they can manage that workflow in some really creative and powerful ways.
One of the things that students always ask about, you think about a course like this is an analysis or a data science related elective. Darden is known for this participatory case method, discussion-based learning environment. How do you make that work with something that might seem, well, that is more technical, that you have all the models and spreadsheets and things that you're developing? How do you make that work in a case method or in a discussion setting?
We do it through a variety of vehicles. We use tech notes. So folks will read a tech note at the same time they're reading a case. They will apply the concept that's being discussed in the tech note to the case. They will then come to the class, and in the class we'll talk not only about the case, but we'll kind of take a 15-20 minute block of the discussion, an hour and a half long class discussion, and really delve into the technical piece. Like, what is the method? Let's unpack the methodology. Let's see if we can internalize and understand its mechanism. Like, what is the essence of why this works in this setting with the data we have and for this particular business problem? We also use videos. So we ask folks to watch videos that are kind of like animated tech notes. And the other thing we do is we rely on learning teams and classmates helping classmates. We have lots of folks at the Darden School who are very quantitatively adept. Some of them are even in the dual degree program. They are in the School of Data Science getting a master's degree there in data science, and they're also in the MBA program. If these folks are on your team, you can rely on them to help you learn more of the technical side of things. And those folks get a lot out of it too. They get a chance to teach. And if they don't entirely understand a methodology, if they have to try to teach a classmate what that is, they learn it all that much better.
I appreciate the shout out for the dual degree, the MBA MSDS program. For those of you who are interested in hearing a bit more about that program, there is a podcast episode out there that features a student who's in that dual degree right now, talking about his experience.
Who is that, Brett?
I can't remember the student off the top of my head, but it was co-hosted by my admissions colleague, Marav Frazier. It's on the Experience Darden podcast, so highly recommend it. You can complete both programs in 24 months, which is incredible. 2 degrees in just 2 years. So Casey, something that's been on my mind is thinking about the value of sort of this data facility and comfort with data, comfort explaining data, using some of these tools. Why is this broadly important for MBA students? We have decision analysis in the core for a reason, but why is this important here?
I guess it's the scale and scope of business and the amount of data that all businesses are recording and maintaining and then surfacing, and management teams are using that data. If you don't use the data, your competitor will. and we need to make sense of the data. And the data is getting so big that you can't look at it in a spreadsheet anymore. Most data sets that even more than 10-person size businesses are generating, sometimes even smaller businesses are generating, you just need to start looking to other tools. The spreadsheet world served us well for, 20, 30 years, 40 years of business. But I think some tools like Tableau, tools like BigQuery, tools like Hadoop, to wrangle data, to visualize data, to run algorithms, and then to distill the findings, to make it explainable. Explainable AI is a big movement inside the machine learning community right now, and it's something that's accessible to managers. It's something that managers are using to guide their thinking around how to respond to the feedback they're getting from the environment, their competitors, their users, their customers. It seems like it's becoming mission critical. It's essential that any manager be able to work with some of these tools, or at least be good consumers of the products that come out of these tools.
Well, one of the things that I really enjoyed from our prep conversation for this conversation is how much time you've been thinking. Let me try this again. How much time you spent thinking about the sequence of courses and the things that a student you can encounter in an MBA program as they develop these skills. I mean, you've got a number of electives this year. So talk to us a little bit more about how you've been thinking about these things.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty decent sequence lined up now through the full 2-year arc of being an MBA at Darden. It starts with the core, 3/4 of a decision analysis class, which is also part data analysis. Then you move into a 4th quarter elective period, and one of those electives you can take is a data visualization and analytics course, where you get into Tableau, larger data sets. You move out of the spreadsheet world after you learn some of the basics of regression and data analysis and sampling theory and hypothesis testing. And you get into visualization and larger data sets and working with SQL and building models on a cloud platform with larger data sets, interpreting those results through explainable AI techniques. And then in the 2nd year, you can transition into a data science course, a proper data science course, where you learn to code in Python. And this is something that somebody entering the MBA program with a non-quantitative background, if they take this whole sequence, can step into this course with confidence. This data science course is designed to take in somebody who has just simply experienced their first year at Darden, have nothing else in their background. They're not some computer science undergrad. They're just coming to this course with an open mind that they can learn some Python enough to know precisely what goes on with a data science team and the kinds of projects they work on and how they work on those projects, what are some of their techniques and concepts and tricks, and the language, learn the terminology while you're learning how to code in Python and learn the beginnings of what goes on in machine learning. And then you can take a course after that in experiments and causal analytics, where you'll learn a bit about how tech firms and pharmaceutical companies and many other companies run experiments to really tease out causal effects. Causal effects are the gold standard in business. If you find a causal effect and it's an actual lever you can pull, it could lead to a whole new strategy and a breakaway success with a particular product that's maybe new or fairly mature. And you can follow this up with a hot topics course at the end of your 2-year period and learn from a bunch of industry professionals what's going on in the world of data science analytics. What are the hottest, latest, greatest ideas, techniques companies are leveraging. So that's a bit of the sequence. Spent some time thinking about what should be in those courses, who can teach them, and what other courses are going on around this elective sequence. There are courses in product management, there are courses in software design, there are courses in software development that you can take as part of a package around digital transformation, for instance, as you work your way through your second year.
You're right, that second year has that choose your own adventure quality to it. Students are, over the course of that very final quarter of their first year and the second year, take 24 total electives. So a lot of choice for full-time MBA students. And I was looking at the course directory. It looks like your data visualization course may be available to executive MBA students this year. Was I reading that correctly?
Yeah, that's right, Brett. I'm teaching data visualization and analytics to the EMBAs, the executive MBA folks, starting in January.
Nice. Well, I want to pick up on something you mentioned, because I think this is such a hallmark of what happens at Darden. The importance of communication and the ability to explain something or to take information, to visualize it, create a story around it. That seems like what you do in all of your classes here.
Yeah, that's right. That's just part of the case method. We put a real problem in front of you, a real company, some real data, and we ask you to address that problem. And part of addressing that problem means creating a compelling story around your solution and convincing the folks in the room, not just the faculty member, but your classmates largely, that you've got a sound approach to addressing the problem. Data visualization can oftentimes be a big part of telling that story. A picture tells 1,000 words, and yeah, that is baked in. I kind of take that as given sometimes.
Well, another thing that I think is really interesting about the Darden classroom, given the questions we've gotten about, the poets and the quants in the room, is when you're telling that story, let's imagine you're someone that has a deep technical background prior to business school, you have to learn how to communicate to the whole room. You can't just speak in code words or things that would be understood by other people who share your background. You have to speak to all 65 people just in your first year section. Same kind of lens for faculty members as they're thinking about teaching.
Yeah, that's right, Brett. I think that's an undervalued, underappreciated at times experience that the case method offers to participants. If you're an expert in a particular area, or just have this amazing skill set that means you could just learn this stuff quickly on your own, even without taking a course, the opportunity to try to teach some other folks that concept or thing that you're just naturally good at picking up is such a gift. It's easily one of the most important skills out there in the world. When you're leading a team, if you can teach everybody in a matter of 10 minutes something that is quite complicated, might take an hour or two for somebody to digest if they would go off and try to learn this on their own, that can really lead to a more efficient workplace, a pleasant workplace where those you manage find the environment super engaging because they're learning so much from you. And this is in the case method environment, you get a chance to practice that over 300 times. Every single time you walk into the Darden classroom is an opportunity for you to practice that skill, teaching others about what is largely a pretty complicated idea, even if it's a qualitative idea.
Does that resonate with your own story? I'm thinking about what you shared earlier. Someone maybe for whom things like statistics or some of these math classes might have come a bit more easily. And here you are, you're a decision analysis faculty member, you've got a PhD, you've done all this study and research, you're in a business school program, and you're talking to lots of different people. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, it does. This is something I aspire to do better every single day, is explain things more concisely, crisply, in a more compelling way. I do it in my research. I work on writing and rewriting and revising yet again to try to make the language that much cleaner, that much more communicative, that the ideas that are coming through per words you include in a document or the things you say in a classroom environment. Yeah, this is super important stuff. Think about it a lot.
Well, you're also the co-academic director of the MSBA program. This is that one-year specialized master's program that Darden offers in conjunction with the McIntire School of Commerce. So those of you who are just learning about the University of Virginia, interesting structure. You have an undergraduate School of Commerce that serves the college students at the university, and then you have a graduate School of Business, which is the Darden School of Business. So two schools have banded together to offer this one-year specialized master's, a master's of science in business analytics. Casey, what do you enjoy about being the co-academic director for this program?
Well, this is a really interesting program. I love the idea that we have taken the best of the data science / analytics stuff out of the MBA program, taken the foundation of business that we feel like an analytics professional should know, and put it into a one-year format in a way that somebody doesn't have to leave their job. The MBA is a big commitment of resources. You're committing your time, and you're taking a break from working, and that can pay off for a lot of folks. But some folks don't want to leave their job, and some folks are specialized enough. They think analytics is their thing, and they don't want to leave that job they're currently in, and so they want to have an experience that isn't quite as long, doesn't cost as much, but still has a large focus on solving business problems. And so that is what the MSBA program is, the Masters of Science in Business Analytics. It's designed to teach just enough data science to solve the business problems that we find many firms face. And that's what we've structured with the McIntire School. They share a vision with us around what a one-year master's program can be in that area.
One of the great things about the program is there's all these interesting team projects that students work on with real live data sets from major companies out there.
Yeah, that's right, Brett. This is something that I've talked to many Darden colleagues about. We got this idea from McIntire, so hats off to the McIntire School. They run this as part of all of their master's programs. What they do at the end of each module, we're not on a quarter system with that one-year program. It's 5 modules, but you can think of them like quarters. They're 6 to 7 week experiences. And at the end of each of those experiences, there's a project that cuts across all of the courses. And you, as a team, deliver on this project, give a presentation at the end, and all the faculty in each of the courses grade that presentation, and it's a part of the grade in each of the courses. So it's a very integrated experience across all the courses that are running in a single mod. It's something we don't do in the MBA program. It's something we should look at. It's quite an innovation. I've never experienced such an integrative approach to bringing 4 what seem like at times disconnected courses, where you can bring together a strategy course and a finance course and a decision analysis course and a leading organizations course. It's pretty phenomenal that you can get that all to come together in a very seamless way that looks like you're just simply solving one problem instead of 4 separate problems. I'll give you an example of some major company sponsors we have every year in our Mod 3. Hilton gives us their worldwide employee service survey data, and it's a people analytics problem largely. And the Hilton executives come and watch the presentations at the end and give feedback to the students about how they did in terms of interpreting the survey results, things they need to be watching out for, either the good or the bad. And every year that we've run this since the inception of the program, we're going into year 4 now. It's been a bit different. And so Hilton signed up again this year, and yeah, it's a great experience, this end of mod project. teamwork that the folks in that program do.
Well, thank you for sharing those insights. And it's great to hear that sort of integrative approach. We just had a mock class for MSBA prospective students earlier this week. And Yael who was leading the mock class, Yael Grushka-Kane, who's as leader of the professional degree programs here at the Darden School of Business. She was talking about this integrative approach and the fact that, in a given mod, you're learning from multiple faculty who are all kind of teaching different things, but it's all with this idea towards this project and, giving you these business skills and the analysis skills, the data skills. And so I want to come to your research interest. As promised, we're going to talk about what you're looking at right now, what you're passionate about. One of the questions we got in the Q&A, Casey, I'm curious about this, is office hours. Some of this is about learning how students engage with faculty here at the Darden School of Business. Do students ever help you with your research projects or things that you're working on?
Yeah, I had a student bring up in class an idea that ended up being a research project that I published in a major journal. I was shocked. I almost was stunned. I was in class, and this woman, Laurel, I still remember what she said. She said, well, why don't you just take these, we were looking at CDFs, cumulative distribution functions. It's a way to represent a forecast. You'd learn this in your first year decision analysis course if you don't already know what this concept is. And we were looking at these probabilities that come off of one of these curves. You can read them off the curve. And she said, well, if you've got a few of these, you could average the forecasts, and maybe that's a better forecast. And that's an obvious idea. Everybody knows that. That's called an ensemble, if folks don't know the technical term for that. And that's very popular in machine learning. But she said, you can average it the other direction. And averaging the other direction is averaging quantiles instead of averaging cumulative probabilities. And, that's also a known idea, but I had never really thought about comparing the two, like a horse race, kind of a bake-off. Should you average the probabilities that people tell you an event is going to occur, or should you average their quantiles, which is averaging the other way? It turns out there's a big difference between those two approaches. There's a very systematic difference. We were able to write down some theory that proves that averaging quantiles is always going to lead to a lower variance forecast. And it has implications for how you tap into the wisdom of crowds. If you give a group of people an opportunity to make forecasts and you want to aggregate up those forecasts, it matters how you do that. And this was a research project that was inspired by a comment by a student in class. Shocking stuff.
Well, what are you looking at right now? What are you really excited about on the research front?
Right now, I'm working on trying to forecast new product life cycles. So new products go, especially like durable goods, or we can think of like computer parts. We can think of computers themselves, laptops. We can think of even like social networks. They go through a birth and like a death process. So they'll grow up, they'll mature, they'll hit a peak in terms of their sales, and then they'll start to decline and then die off. Even successful companies with hugely successful brands, they oftentimes experience this kind of life cycle with a particular generation of their product. So if you just go to Google Trends and you type in iPhone 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 and overlay all of those search interests of those different generations of the product, you'll see a whole bunch of overlapping little life cycles where it grows up, hits a peak, and then comes back down. Like people don't buy the iPhone 7 now. Actually, you can't even buy it. But companies have to manage the life cycle of the generations of their products if they don't just simply have to manage their entire company's life cycle. You can almost already see the life cycle tracing itself out with companies like Facebook or brands like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. You can go look at those those kinds of social networks and see these life cycles. And so I've been trying to develop some time series models that would allow you to learn from the evolution of your own product, but also leverage data on past similar products and incorporate the learning from the two pieces in a balanced way, so that you're putting enough weight on some past similar products that have fully gone through the birth and death cycle, and then you're putting just the right amount of weight on what's happened with the current product up until the current time, and maybe it's prior to the peak, maybe it's even before launch, and how can you balance those two things as you go through the evolution?
What got you interested in looking at this particular question?
Well, I've been interested in time series forecasting for quite a while. Teach it as part of courses at Darden. I've written a textbook on time series forecasting, and one of the thorniest problems within the world of time series forecasting is life cycle forecasting. It's just quite difficult to understand where the peak is when you're prior to the peak of a product's life cycle. And if you just use the data on the current product that's evolving in its own life cycle to try to forecast where its peak is going to be, you're really going to have a difficult time. And so researchers have known you've got to leverage past data, past life cycle data. But my sense is it just hasn't been totally worked out. I feel like there's a big gap there. And we're just going to offer one solution. I don't think it's going to be the end of the story. And other solutions are out there. We don't think they've answered the question. And while we don't have the full answer, the gap is big enough for me to feel like we could write a few papers in this area and make some headway.
Well, Casey, it's been a pleasure being here with you this morning. We in these office hour series, we've talked to all manner of faculty across any number of areas. It's been really interesting to hear about your work, your work as a data scientist, your time at Google, and how you help students both from very technical backgrounds and also non-technical backgrounds, the poets and the quants, navigate their way through decision analysis and beyond during their time at Darden. I wonder, as an alumnus of the school, as a member of the faculty, what's your why Darden pitch for folks who are here today? Why this particular business school?
Well, I think the same thing is true of Darden today as when I was choosing between business schools, and it's this case method. So first and foremost, it's the focus on practical problems. It's this discussion-based format of learning, learning by talking it out, and the collaborative environment. Darden is still very team-based. You're on learning teams, you're in sections, and even the whole section feels like one big team where everybody is trying to facilitate everybody else's learning, faculty members included. And that is the why for me. That to me is the pinnacle of education. I've seen a lot of different styles. I've sat through lots of lectures. I've done the MBA at Darden, and there's just been, for me, no greater learning environment than when I was a student, or when I walk out of a class and I feel like that really hit the sweet spot. And I know it when we're right in the middle of it, and we're in minute 55, and we've still got more than a half an hour to go, and folks are really engaged. And when you look around a room of 60 folks and you've got 40 hands up, that's when you know that you're not in the normal classroom. And that happens at Darden on a fairly regular basis. And I'm guessing that is happening in probably less than 1% of classrooms around the world. So that's the why for me.
And that was my interview with Casey Lichtendahl, Darden faculty member and co-academic director of the MSBA program. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.